There are two kinds of men in this world: those who move according to other people's expectations, and those who move according to their own design. Most never notice the difference. They wake up, go to work, follow the schedule, respond to messages, and fall asleep. Their life is a reaction, a series of responses to demands placed on them by others. A few men step outside that pattern. They begin to observe instead of just participate. They sense that something in them refuses to be domesticated. This is the beginning of the Sigma mindset, the mind of the man who lives in the world but is not owned by it. Centuries ago, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote a sentence that still shakes people today. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Most misunderstand it. They think it glorifies cruelty. In reality, it exposes a brutal law of human nature. People respect what they cannot easily control. The Sigma understands this instinctively. He doesn't dedicate his life to chasing approval. He builds himself into someone whose presence, whose standards, whose discipline cannot be ignored. That is the dark psychology of the lone strategist. If you are listening to this on your way to work, in the gym, in the car, or late at night when the world is quiet, pay close attention. Because this isn't a fantasy about labels. This is a philosophy of life, a set of psychology codes and Sigma rules that you can use to rewire how you see yourself and how you move. Not to become a cartoon character, but to become a man who quietly bends his reality in his favor. The internet turned Sigma into a meme, a playlist, a joke about men who sit alone, pretend not to care, and listen to dark music with a straight face. But a label without a backbone is nothing. The real Sigma is not an aesthetic, it is a structure. It is an architecture of thought and behavior. It is a decision to live as the main strategist of your own life, rather than a supporting actor in somebody else's story. Think about a character like Tommy Shelby from Peaky Blinders. The room moves around him, but he does not move around the room. He listens more than he speaks. People underestimate him, try to pull him, test him, threaten him. He bends, but he does not break. When he acts with calculation. That is not a fantasy. It is an amplified version of something very real. A man whose inner world is not determined by the noise outside. The Sigma mindset is not about copying his accent or his clothes. It is about learning to carry that same inner stillness and outer precision in your own context. So what does that look like in the life of a man who works, grinds, carries responsibility, and is not interested in becoming a clown for attention? It begins with sovereignty over the one territory you truly own, your mind. First, the Sigma learns that his emotions are weather, not orders. Dark psychology is very clear about one thing. If someone can control your state, they can control your decisions. If they know exactly what will make you angry, insecure, jealous, desperate, guilty, they own you without chains. You become predictable, you become programmable. The lone strategist refuses that fate. You will still feel everything. You will feel the sting of disrespect, the heat of anger, the heaviness of disappointment, the frustration when your effort is ignored. Anyone who tells you to feel nothing is either lying or broken. The Sigma mindset does not kill emotion. It puts emotion in its rightful place. Your feelings are signals, not commanders. You notice them, you name them, but you do not immediately obey them. That is the difference between a man and a puppet. And imagine this. You receive a message that would normally throw you into a spiral. The old version of you fires back, over-explains, tries to fix everyone's perception of you. The Sigma version reads it, feels the surge of reaction, and waits. He goes for a walk. He trains. He finishes his work. He lets the first wave pass. Only then does he ask one question: what action keeps my power? Not, what action gives me relief? That single question is one of the deepest Sigma rules you can adopt. It belongs to the same lineage of thought as Machiavelli. Control yourself first, or someone else will gladly do it for you. Second, the Sigma understands visibility. Not all of you is for public consumption. We live in a time where oversharing is encouraged. Every thought, every emotion, every plan is broadcast, documented, posted, and discussed. People expose their weaknesses and then wonder why they are so easy to manipulate. If everyone knows what you fear, what you want, and what you depend on, they hold the strings. The lone strategist adopts a different approach, controlled opacity. He doesn't lie, he doesn't pretend to be someone he is not, but he chooses what to reveal and to whom. When it comes to his plans, his finances, his private life, his deepest doubts, he is selective. This isn't paranoia, it's prudence. It's dark psychology applied to self-protection. You stop handing people the weapons they could use on you later. When someone asks, "What are you working on?" you don't owe them the blueprint. "I'm building something for my future" is enough. When someone presses into your private life, fishing for gossip, you don't reward them. You redirect. You give headlines, not chapters. People learn very quickly, your life is not free entertainment. Behind your calm presence is a mind that does not feel the need to be constantly seen to be real. That is a stark contrast to the desperate hunger for visibility that rules most people today. Look again at archetypes like Tommy Shelby, John Wick, or any strong silent lead. The power is not only in what they do, but in what no one knows they are thinking. Controlled mystery creates a psychological pressure in others. They project strength, depth, and danger onto you simply because they cannot read you fully. That is one of the oldest psychology codes in the world. What is partially hidden is often perceived as greater than it is. Third, the Sigma chooses solitude instead of fleeing it. Most men fear being alone because solitude holds up a mirror. No distractions, no constant noise, no crowd to disappear into. Just you and the truth of your life, your income, your body, your habits, your addictions, your patterns, your unrealized potential. It's easier to drown that truth in endless scrolling than to look at it. The lone strategist walks in the opposite direction. He treats solitude as a forge. When you are alone, you are not missing out. You are refining. You are listening, learning, lifting, planning. That time in the car on the way to work, it can be thoughtless noise or it can be a training ground for your mind. That late night hour when everyone else is numbing themselves, it can be wasted, or it can be the hour where you rewrite your future. And this is where the philosophy of life becomes practical. Every period of solitude is a chance to sharpen one of four things: your body, your skills, your knowledge, or your discipline. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to disappear from humanity. You simply convert empty time into deliberate time. You turn "I'm just killing time" into "I'm constructing a new version of myself while others sleep." Over months and years, this difference becomes visible. People call it talent, luck, or genetics because they didn't see the quiet hours. But you were there. You decided that being alone would not make you weaker, but stronger. That is a Sigma rule. When the crowd disappears, your progress doesn't. Fourth, there is the matter of standards and the unwritten bros code, not the surface level beer commercial version of brotherhood. The real code that governs who you keep in your inner circle and who you slowly release back into the distance. Dark psychology reminds us that people are driven by incentive. If disrespect has no cost, it will continue. If betrayal leads to another chance and another, then betrayal is cheap. The Sigma does not turn into a raging judge screaming punishments. He simply lives by a clear internal principle. Access to me is not free. You can be polite to many, you can be civil with most, but only those who show a certain level of respect, loyalty, and reciprocity get unfiltered access to your time and energy. A friend who constantly belittles you, even as a joke, is communicating something. A colleague who only appears when they need help, but disappears when you need support, is communicating something. A person who crosses your boundary, apologizes, and then repeats it is communicating something. The Sigma does not spend years rewriting what people are clearly telling him through their actions. He believes them, and he adjusts. The adjustment is often subtle. Fewer conversations, fewer favors, fewer invitations. You don't need to create drama. You simply stop subsidizing their comfort at the expense of your self-respect. That is a higher form of the Bras code. Loyalty is not owed. It is earned and maintained. You stand by those who truly stand by you. You reduce your exposure to those who only stand by you when it is convenient. This is not cold-heartedness. It is intelligent love for your own life. Fifth, the Sigma becomes a student of patterns. Machiavelli's analysis of power was based on watching how humans behave repeatedly over time. He understood something that modern psychology confirms. What people do under pressure, under desire, and under fear reveals more truth than anything they say in peaceful moments. Pattern recognition is one of the most powerful psychology codes you can learn. You begin to notice who always has an excuse, who always overpromises, who always plays the victim, who always seeks chaos, who is quietly reliable, who doesn't ask but always shows up. You stop treating these repetitions as random accidents. You treat them as data. And you do not only turn this gaze outward, you turn it inward. Where do you break your own word? Which hours of the day do you consistently waste? Which situations consistently pull you into emotional reactions you regret? Which type of person is able to manipulate you, attract you, or distract you most easily? These patterns are the code of your current life. Sigma rules demand that once you see these patterns, you take responsibility for interrupting them. You design new routines that make it harder to fall into the old cycles. You change the environments that trigger your worst habits. You limit exposure to people who are poison to your focus or your peace. This is not a short motivational high. It is long-term engineering. It is the difference between drifting and steering. Sixth, the lone strategist thinks in arcs, not moments. Most men are ruled by the immediate. The next meal, the next show, the next notification, the next weekend. Whole years of their life pass, measured only by pay cycles and short bursts of entertainment. Machiavelli's world was different. Rulers had to think in terms of stability, legacy, the endurance of their power across generations. Their decisions could not be purely emotional because their consequences were too large. You may not govern a city-state, but you rule something just as important, the future of your own existence. A Sigma mindset borrows this long perspective. You start evaluating your choices not only by how they feel now, but by what they build later. This is where trending concepts like high-value man, alpha mindset, and silent grind stop being buzzwords and become architecture. The question becomes, day after day, if I live like this for 3 years, who would I become? Every early morning you push through, every training session you don't skip, every project you move forward inch by inch, every temptation you resist becomes part of a bigger line. The line either curves upward into strength or downward into regret. There is no neutral. You are either building or eroding. Picture 2 versions of yourself 3 years from now. One stayed loyal to comfort, same habits, same reactions, same standards, same people, same excuses. The other stayed loyal to the Sigma rules we're talking about: emotional control, guarded visibility, deliberate solitude, ruthless pattern recognition, long-term thinking. Both versions will exist. The one that shows up depends on what you repeatedly choose when no one is watching. Seventh, there is the question of presence and how you carry yourself in the world. Sigma energy is not about being bitter, hostile, or permanently distant. It is about being rooted. A man who knows where he stands does not need to prove it in every conversation. His strength is not measured by how loud he speaks, but by how little he is willing to betray himself just to be liked. In practice, this means your language changes. You waste fewer words. You stop explaining your no 30 different ways. You stop laughing when you are the only one paying the price for everyone else's amusement. When something is not acceptable to you, you say so calmly. When something doesn't align with your path, you decline, not with malice, but with clarity. This can be uncomfortable at first. People who are used to the more compliant version of you may push back. They may accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of thinking you are better than them. Let them speak. You are not responsible for preserving an illusion that existed only because you lacked boundaries. Look again at the archetype of the lone strategist, the mafia boss, the quiet warrior, the calculated leader. He doesn't rush. He doesn't chase every argument. He doesn't jump to correct every misunderstanding. He chooses his battles. He knows that what truly defines him is not the opinions of others, but the consistency of his code. So how do you live this day by day without turning it into a performance or a temporary motivational phase? You turn it into a quiet creed. You wake up with one clear understanding. Today is another chance to prove to yourself who you are becoming. You are not trying to look Sigma. You are trying to be sovereign. You are trying to become a man who 10 years from now can look back and say, I did not abandon myself. When your emotions spike, you practice the pause. When someone pushes too far, you enforce distance instead of begging. When you have an empty moment, you choose something that builds you, even slightly, instead of something that erodes you. When you feel alone, you remember that many of the strongest men in history, warriors, thinkers, leaders, builders, went through long seasons where no one understood what they were constructing. You can listen to all the Sigma Grindset edits, dark psychology breakdowns, alpha male speeches, and high-value man podcasts in the world. But at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Will you live by a code, or will you keep changing your shape to fit everyone else's expectations? Machiavelli wrote for princes, but his insights belong to anyone willing to step out of passive existence. His world was filled with alliances, betrayals, power plays, and illusions. So is yours. The faces have changed. The weapons have changed. The battlefield has changed, but the human heart has not. The Sigma mindset is simply one way of saying, I will not be a blind piece in this game. You are not obligated to be loud. You are not obligated to be socially dominant. You can be quiet, reserved, introverted, and still become one of the most powerful figures in your environment if you commit to these principles. You control your inner state as much as possible. You guard what others know about you. You use solitude to sharpen, not to decay. You reward respect with access and disrespect with distance. You study patterns instead of clinging to fantasies. You think long-term rather than selling your future for a small pleasure in the present. You speak and move like a man who has somewhere to go. That is the dark psychology of the lone strategist. It is not about hatred. It is not about revenge. It is about building yourself into someone whose life cannot be easily derailed by the moods, manipulations, or mediocrity of others. So as this message ends and your day continues, whether you are driving, working, training, or getting ready to sleep, let one idea settle in your mind. You are not here simply to be carried by the current. You are here to shape the direction of your own river. You may walk among many, but you answer to one. You.